And we're on. Hello. Okay. Okay. So today we're gonna focus on probably more, on Abraham, Sarah, Yitzhak, Ishmael, kind of the, lessons on what could possibly go wrong. Then we'll move in. Oh, hi. We're gonna move into Yitzhak and Rivka and the twins, and then I don't think we're going to end up getting to Yaakov and his wives this week, and then we'll finish up with Yaakov and clan, Jacob and sons next week. Okay, so let's start with Bereshit Perek Kaf. I'm sorry, Kafah. And we kind of started, and one of it, I don't know, Suzanne, if it was you or if it was somebody else, pointed out the irony of the fact that his name is Yitzhak. Was that you who said that?
It was someone else, actually.
Was somebody else? Okay, but we're going to talk about that because it's actually a very fascinating kind of thing. Okay, so just like as a bit of a recap, right? Sarah couldn't have a child, and she brings in this maidservant to have a child in her name. This is a totally common Mesopotamian practice. Like, the Code of Hammurabi has a whole section on that kind of scenario. It was actually very interesting. I heard a shiur a number of years ago. It actually was Rav Yoel Ben Nun came in and spoke to the Tanakh department about Abraham's treatment, so to speak, or Sarah's treatment of Hagar, and he pulled out the Code of Hammurabi. And actually, if you look at the Code of Hammurabi and what Sarah was entitled to do to Hagar under the law, which was basically to kill her, Hagar got off mercifully. We tend to look at the whole Hagar story through both our Jewish eyes, where we, Chesed and Rachamim are tantamount values, and also to some degree through our 21st century Western, somewhat egalitarian views of, treat everybody with dignity, and how could she have treated him that way. But in the zeitgeist of that time, she actually treated Hagar kindly. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there so as something to think about. But one of the really dogmas of family systems is that when there is a relationship between two people and there is conflict or tension in that relationship, the worst thing you can do, and therefore the most natural thing to do, is to bring in a third person. It's called triangulation. Kids learn this instinctively. It's the playing one parent off the other. Like mom says no, go to dad, dad says no, go to mom. That's what the kid is doing. They're triangulating. Similarly, it's the reverse. Very often, sadly, when there's conflict between the parents, the child will be brought in as, as that third party, or the mother-in-law, the father-in-law. It's very natural, because when you're feeling threatened, what you want is, number one, an ally, and number two, you want to lower the risk to yourself. So even if you're going to do something stupid, but to lower the risk, and this is the basis of all risk-taking behavior, it's to get away from a greater pain. It's called the law of secondary gain, another psychological concept, that people don't engage in self-destructive behavior unless what they gain from that self-destructive behavior is perceived to be greater than what they would gain by not engaging in the self-destructive behavior. In other words, classic example is somebody who turns to alcohol to avoid their emotional pain, right? So it's easier, quote unquote, to deal with the fallout of being an alcoholic than it would be to face whatever pain is being presented to you that you're trying to run away from. That's like why rule number one of AA is like you have to go back and apologize to everybody that you've hurt, because the idea is like the only way you're going to be able to get out of this cycle is to face it. So Sarah was dealing with a very concrete pain of not being able to bear children, and obviously the tension and the conflict that causes. And so she brings in Hagar, which is a very normal, naturally, at that time was socially appropriate, legally acceptable, but in a psychological construct was just not a good idea. And we see that fallout twice. We see the fallout the first time when Hagar was taunting her, basically, oh look, I have a child, you don't, and God must love me and doesn't love you, and there are tons and tons of midrashim, but you can only imagine, the scenario that's going on, and so I was like, get out of here, just, she kicked her out, and then Hagar comes back, and things are okay for a little while, and Ishmael is born, and grows up, and things are really quiet for about 13 years until Yitzhak is born. And that's another part of psychological theory, and particularly family systems theory, is that any time you have an existing system, even if it's not a particularly functional system, but anytime you add a new element to that system, everybody has to readjust, right? It's like when there's a new child born into a family, and there's, the child has to readjust, and then all of a sudden the parents are not just parenting one child, the parents are having to deal with two children, and then when there's an infant, you've got the physical exhaustion. Or there's a wonderful book written by a woman named Leah, I'm blanking on her last name. I want to say Abelo, but that's wrong. She's from Chicago, and I know her. But she's a social worker, and she wrote a whole book about in-law relations. That when you get married, right, all of a sudden you hear, let's say, right, so me, right, so I'm me, and I have my two parents, and I have my three siblings. Okay, so now I have my husband, right, so now all of a sudden into this dynamic of me and my parents and my siblings, or me and my parents, comes my husband. So that's already one addition. But my husband doesn't just come by himself. He comes with his system, and somehow we focus on the familial term, mother, father, sister, brother, as opposed to forgetting the in-law, right? And then there's this whole set of expectations that these people, who for all intents and purposes are strangers, and in my case they were total strangers because they're from Minneapolis and I'd never met them before, all of a sudden I hear, mother, father, and like they're supposed to be this relationship which is completely unrealistic, and so which is very often was her hypothesis where things start to go wrong. And so we have a child born after Ishmael has been an only child for 13 years. Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and Ishmael have kind of established this uneasy truce, and now Sarah has this immensely miraculous birth. Okay, so that's kind of where we pick up on the story. Right, Hashem pakadet Sarah, and Hashem remembered Sarah as he had promised her, right, and she gives birth. Vayikra Abraham et Shem beno hanolad lo asher yelada lo Sarah Yitzhak. So that's already gives us their Yitzhak is a multi-dimensional addition to this family. And this language here, this tripartite, and I use that word because I can, that tripartite language here, right? Beno, nolad lo, asher yelada lo, Sarah is mirrored by the Akedah, right? Bincha, ahav, yechidcha, asher ahavta, et Yitzhak, right? So there's all of these layers, right? And he calls him Yitzhak, and it's incredibly interesting, and I think appropriate that he's called Yitzhak, and this is really the first time that we have God kind of foreshadowing, and even according to some instructing that this child should be named Yitzhak. So as opposed to Abraham, who was named by his parents, Avram, and whose name was then renamed by Hashem, and opposed to Cain, who was named by his mother, and we're going to get to Yaakov and Esau. This child is named by everybody. Right? Abraham laughed, Sarah laughed, Hashem said, you're going to call him Yitzhak, and despite all the negative connotations which we're about to find and see from Yitzhak, he's named Yitzhak. And this is my opinion, that what I think one of the lessons is that a child and a child's place in a family and a child's place with siblings and and each person's place in their own space is to some degree what you make of it. Like, it goes back to the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. So that this laughter could have been joy, could have been disbelief, and we're going to see now could have been mockery, and to some degree what you are is what you make of yourself. That's my take on this name, because otherwise it really is a very odd name, because the connotation is generally not joy. And then he grows up, and now we're in Pasuk Tet, and this is where we left off last week. So he grows up, he is weaned, right? Vaya'as Abraham mishteh gadol b'yom higamel et Yitzhak. So now Yitzhak is his own person, right? That we know that is, when you're weaned, is the beginning of being your own person. Traditionally, it's at age 3. Vateri Sarah, and Sarah saw, and we know this is a klal gadol in Torah, that the verb lirot has has two levels to it. Lirot both means to see with one's eyes, but lirot also means to understand. It means like to get, to really perceive. That's why Nevuah is called a mar'eh. Right? So she perceives et ben Hagar hamitzrit. Okay, so she sees the son of Ben Hagar, who is an Egyptian. Note, he's not referred to as Ishmael here. So she's not looking at Ishmael as an individual. She's looking at Ishmael as who he is in this family. He is the son of a maidservant. He is the son of an Egyptian maidservant, and he is the son of a maidservant who has caused Sarah personal grief. So Asher Yalda Lola Abraham, but she also sees that this is Abraham's child, which logistically is a bit of a problem. And we're going to see how that plays out in the Mefarshim. Mitzachek. And he is engaged in this behavior of mitzachek. And if those of you who have the source sheets, I brought in for you at the bottom of, I don't know what page this is, I think it's page 2, or the second side, a long Ramban. And effectively the Ramban here quotes Rashi, quotes Ibn Ezra, and then says what he thinks. He also refers to the Rambam, but we're gonna skip that section. So Rashi quotes the Gemara / Tosefta, and Rashi says, Lashon Avodah Zarah, Lashon Ritzicha, Lashon Gilui Arot. Okay, so that the word mitzachek, and there are proof texts for each of this. One allusion, one reference is that verb means doing Avodah Zarah, and the reference that's used there is by the Egel. One is murder, which we're going to get to in a second, and one is Gilui Arayot. And we saw that with Yitzhak and Rivka, that, Yitzhak is mitzachek at Ishto. Like, clearly there's a sexual connotation, and the Gilui Arayot connotation also comes from the Egel. So the Ritzicha piece of it, Rashi here goes on. Okay, we're going to get back to that, right? And then another element is Meiriv im Yitzchak al ha-Yerusha. Okay, ve'omer, and he says, Ani bechor, I am the firstborn, ve'yoresh pishnayim, and I'm the one who's going to inherit the double portion. Ve'yotz'im lasadeh, and they go out to the field. v'notel kashto v'yoreh bo chitzim. And they go out to the field. Supposedly Ishmael is going to teach Yitzhak how to hunt, and instead he is actually shooting arrows at him. Kema de Tamar, like it says, and this is a quote from Mishlei, Kemit halei, I can never pronounce this word, Kemit lehaleya. Don't ask. Okay, mitlaleya is a madman, like a crazy person. Hayore zikim chitzim v'mavet, that is at shooting fiery arrows, and like death kind of arrows, whatever. Kain ish rama et re'ehu, so too is somebody who fools or tricks his friend. The amar halo misachekani. Oh, I was just kidding. It was just a joke. Okay, so it's like basically you can't play with fire, whether it's verbal fire or actual legitimate fire, and then say, oh, I was just kidding. That, that you're not kidding when you're slinging, right? It's the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. That's not a joke. So that's where the Ritzicha is coming from, that either the Ritzicha is literally that Ishmael was trying to actually kill Yitzhak, or the Ritzicha is verbal, that he was mocking him and saying like, yeah, right, you think you're going to inherit? No, hello, I'm the older one, I know the rules, I know the laws, I'm going to inherit. Okay, so that's Rashi quoting the Midrash. Go further down, about 3/4 of the way down, where it says Rabbi Avraham, and Rabbi Avraham is the Ibn Ezra. Rabbi Avraham Omer al derech hapshat ki mitzachek mishta'ashea b'derech kol na'ar v'tikaneh bo ba'avur heyoto gadol mimenu. Okay, that what was Ishmael doing? He was just fooling around with Yitzhak. He wasn't. According to the Ibn Ezra, there was no real malice, okay? But Sarah was zealous for Yitzhak's sake because Ishmael was either bigger or physically stronger. Like, she was basically afraid for him that he was going to get hurt somehow. And then the Ramban continues, V'hanachom be'einayim, and what I believe, Shahaya bo, that this whole episode happened on the same day as the party. V'ra'ata oto mal'ig al Yitzchak, that Sarah saw Ishmael mocking him, putting him down, bullying him. Al hamishteh, or the party itself, hagadol, v'lakach amar, and there, that is why it says, Hakatuv et ben Hagar hamitzrit v'lo amar Yishmael. Right? She saw that this is the son of the maidservant, the one who's always going to be second class. Like he doesn't understand his place. He's overreaching himself. V'kein amra garesh et ha'ama hazot ve'et banav. Ki amra ha'eved hamal'ig al adonav chayav hu lamavet. And she's right, by the way. That was the law. A servant who mocks his master, according to the law of Hammurabi, and like visibly, publicly mocks his master, is chayav mita. O lehalkoto, or at the very least to be whipped. Ve'eni rotzeh rak shetigaresh oto. I'm only asking that you send them away. Mi'iti velo yirash b'nechasecha, and that he should not inherit your wealth, klal, at all. Im b'ni, with my son. Shehu ben Gvira, that my son is the son of the real wife, of the mistress. The Amra, and she said, she yigaresh gam imo, that his mother should also be kilo yuchal hana'ar la'azov et imo, because it would be, really cruel to separate the child from his mother. The azav et imo v'amit, and if apparently for whatever reason, if his mother would leave it, he would die. Okay. So like what's really going on here? And what's really going on here really depends on who is, on the question of intent, on the question of perception. There's one more opinion that was, and this was told to me by my mentor, Dr. Esther Schkupp, who lives in Chicago, that that her take on this is which is similar to the Ramban, is that what was Ishmael doing? Ishmael was being Yitzhak. He was Yitzhaking, right? He was basically saying, I'm Yitzhak. I'm the firstborn. I'm the one that Abraham loves. And Sarah was like, no, this is, it's not happening. It's just not happening. So whether this was aggressive or foolish or clueless or vindictive, whatever it is, this was a point where one party said, this relationship, this system is not viable.
Maybe just like Hagar went beyond her bounds, so her son did. It was just kind of a culture with them.
Right, exactly. And Sarah's like, this is not working. And it's a really thought-provoking thing to say that, yeah, there might actually be a time when you have to throw your own kid out of the house. Right? That's, imagine that, as parents, or as, imagine we read that in the paper, right? That in the Jewish Standard or whatever, that so-and-so threw their kid out of the house for drugs, for getting pregnant, for, alcohol poisoning, for petty larceny, for whatever, okay? There's no evidence that Ishmael had actually done anything wrong here. Basically, he was a bad kid, a teenager, and Sarah's like, I don't want this. I'm telling you, number one, this is going to end badly, and number two, I don't want him around my child. And it's a hard thought to swallow.
Is there evidence that he was a bad kid, or, I mean, not that I necessarily want to take his side,
Right.
but for an older child and a much older child, it's like if you're bar mitzvah age and, you have a little bratty brother and you're like, I'm the oldest, well, he is the oldest.
Exactly. And so that, that's the $64,000 question. That's really like, if you go according to Rashi's view, which is Rashi's quoting Rabbi Akiva, and we know that Rabbi Akiva was really highly, highly sensitive to and therefore very zealous for keeping even potentially negative influences out. This is the time of Rome and of the very seductive power of might and beauty and materialism and philosophy and secular education. So what I think Rabbi Akiva is trying to say is that even if it doesn't look bad, it's bad. And these things are bad. The Ibn Ezra takes a different view, which is your view. He was just being a brat. He was being an obnoxious, bullying 13-year-old, in this case 16-year-old brother, without necessarily being malevolent. And as a matter of fact, later in this parak, when Hagar cries out to God, and the pasuk says that God saw the lad ba'asher husham, as he was there, and the midrash says right on the spot, he says that the angels came before God and said, he's a bad seed, get rid of him now. And Hashem responded, you can't use his future against him now. At this moment in his life, he's still innocent. He hasn't done anything wrong yet, which is exactly what you're saying. So that midrash sees Ishmael as, pain in the neck, rebellious, James Dean type teenager, but not evil. And that's why Hashem says, at this moment, I can't allow him to die. He doesn't deserve to die. And then the Ramban kind of straddles that middle ground where what he says is that what Sarah is seeing is that at this moment, he's not bad yet. He's disrespectful. But that in and of itself has the potential to go so badly wrong that I would rather just get rid of him now rather than get to the point where he will end up facing either the death penalty or incarceration. You know, it's kind of a tough love type of approach rather than a, you know, he's bad, get rid of him approach. And it really, you know, so I think another reason why I brought in this Ramban is that you really can see even already in the time of the Rishonim, right, 1,000 years ago, and even before that, 2,000 years ago in the Medrash, that there's differing views of Ishmael, which is one of the things I love about Torah Shebaal Peh, that it's not just this monolithic view. Typically, you know, kids learn in first grade, oh, Ishmael was bad, Esau was bad, Lavan was bad. That's simplistic. You know, yes, they're bad, but it's also a morality tale that you have to look at the big picture. Like right now, something might look innocent, but you can't just look at it right now, but on the other hand, you have to look at it right now, and that's what makes life and living and interacting with other people so complicated. You know, life is a messy business, and we see this from here already. And according to numbers of the Midrashim, Abraham mourned this. He never wanted to do this. He was not happy about this, right? And it says right here in the pasuk, which is, you know, just another indication that if you look at what it says in the pasuk, there's vayera hadavar me'od be'imei Avraham, and that's that whenever the Torah uses that word me'od, that's a heavy word. That's like many bold letters, many caps, many just that, you know, anytime you encounter that word me'od, that's why b'chol me'odecha is interpreted as being with all your might or strength or your muchness. It means a lot. That's really what the word me'od means. Al odot beno, because Ishmael was his son. And this is, you know, again, we have this system. He doesn't care about Hagar so much. But Ishmael's his kid. That's hard. Half siblings are hard. Step siblings are hard. That kind of dynamic it's hard. Families are hard under the best of circumstances, and this is just what makes it even more complicated. And it's ad kidei kach, to the point that Hashem himself has to intervene. And
because don't you think Avram sees it as once he loses the Avraham influence, it's hopeless?
No. I think it
In a
could
way.
be that, or it could be, it's my child.
Yeah.
He's 16. You're asking me to throw my 16-year-old son into the desert?
Right, but for him to have grown up better, he needed the Avraham factor, and
Right.
once that was gone, I mean, how was it going to go?
Right.
And
Not
also-
well.
Yeah.
And Abraham never saw Ishmael the way Sarah did. So
Right.
he's like, I don't get what's wrong.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he's totally, you know, and he doesn't, he also wasn't sensitive to Hagar kind of
Right.
moving in with him and what all the implications of
Right.
that. So Sarah realizes it has to be black and white.
Right.
He can't be
Exactly.
here because Abraham's not going to intervene.
Right. And I think that's a very accurate perception, is that we have a difference between a black and a white and a relative. And we have a difference between somebody who is outside the situation, right? Ishmael is not her child, and somebody who's in the situation. And it's very, very hard for parents to be objective about their own children, and even more painful to send them away. You know, send them to rehab, send them to jail. You know, it's hard, and I think that's what the Torah is telling us, is that your child is always going to be your child, whether Abraham knew that Ishmael was bad or not, which is also the subject of debate. It's clear that either because he feels that we're going to, lose this child to Yiddishkeit, or just on a very simple level, this is my child. And there are piyutim written in the Sephardi Sidurim of Rosh Hashanah where it describes his pain of losing Ishmael. And that, that's why he marries that Keturah and or brings her gifts. And there's even a midrash that says that, like Chana with Shmuel, Abraham goes once a year to bring Ishmael something. But Ishmael just won't see him anymore. And it's only after he dies that Ishmael and Yitzhak come to bury him. It's very tragic. it's really a cautionary tale of what can go wrong. And Hashem intervenes and he says, Kol asher tomer lecha Sarah shma b'kolah. I'm giving you my consent to do this. And both consent in the sense of that, that it's the woman's, in a way, realpolitik that is being respected here. And also that God is saying, I can see the cosmic picture. She's right. You're wrong. It's hard, though. I see.
I never saw it from Sarah's part, but she was also taking a risk, alienating her husband, or protecting her child, which do you do?
Right.
So, she's more easily seen as, the vindictive spouse.
Yep.
But this was, I'm sure things were never the same between, that.
We'd never hear her again.
Yeah, but I feel like once he got the concurrence from God, I'm not sure that, to me, it doesn't seem, I don't know that. God sided with her.
Right.
In a clear way.
But I think, on the other hand, though, it's like, even if God sides with her, that doesn't mean that there isn't irreparable damage to the relationship. And I think the text, to some degree, bears this out. This is the last conversation between Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah.
Right? Because what happens next is the Akedah. And then Sarah dies. It would be very easy for a historical fiction writer to fill in these blanks as Abraham and Sarah drifting apart, which is, why there's no conversation about the Akedah, right? It just goes, Achar advarim ha'ela v'Hashem nisat Abraham. It's kind of weird when you juxtapose the Akedah to this. Like, if Sarah is so dedicated to protecting her child, now granted this is 34 years later, but still, like it's like, you can either see it as an indication of how deteriorated the relationship was between Abraham and Sarah, or you can see it as how great Sarah's dedication was to Hashem, because there's no way that she didn't know what was going on. I just refuse to believe that when your husband and your 37-year-old kid pack up their donkey with sticks and with coals for fire and no sheep, she's not an idiot. And she doesn't say anything.
It's in time of child sacrifice also.
Right.
So.
And it's in the time of child sacrifice.
Or unless she was not, she's like not in the picture. I don't know, if she can pick up and leave,
Right.
but,
So,
but it also explains why Yitzhak, Sarah's tent takes over
Exactly.
a thing. This was the mother who protected him above all else,
Right. So it's just, again, it tells us so much about relationship between mother and son, and wife and husband, and father and son, and father and husband and wife. Like you have, and then you also have the interplay of the siblings into, and we don't really hear Yitzhak talk. We hear him in the Medrash, but we don't hear him in the text. But we hear Ishmael, and it's actually here at the beginning of Perek Kaf Bet that there's a midrash. I don't remember if it's Rashi who quotes it or Ramban who quotes it, that the Akedah was as much a test for Yitzhak of be careful what you wish for, as it was for Abraham, because the midrash sees this juxtaposition between the Yitzhak Ishmael and then in the very next parak, the Akedah, and it brings down the story that at that moment of the party, when Ishmael was taunting Yitzhak, and Ishmael said, "You think it's such a big deal that you had a bris milah when you were 8 days old? Well, I had a bris milah when I was 13. To which Yitzhak responds, you think it's such a big deal that you had a bris milah when you were 13? Well, Hashem only demanded that you give a tiny piece of your skin. If Hashem demanded me that I would give my whole body, I would do it. Bam. Be careful what you wish for. But it's interesting, it's really fascinating to me that typically, while we read Achar Dvarim Ha'ela Nisa Elokim et Abraham, we see the Akedah as being focused on Abraham. This particular midrash says the Akedah wasn't just about Abraham. The Akedah was about Yitzhak as well. Okay, let's move into Yitzhak and Rivka and the twins. So now let's get even more complicated. Not only do we have a family of 4, 2 children, we have 4 where 2 of them are twins, which is, as I said, its own dynamic. This is like, again, if you like Sefer Bereshit, it's this cautionary tale of, okay, these are the things that can go wrong. These are the things that did go wrong. Take heed and try to not make these mistakes. In general, the Tanakh only very rarely tells us what goes right. I tell my students that there's a line in Sefer Chagai, which is like the very end of Nevi'im, and Hashem gives Chagai a nevuah that says, tell Bnei Israel they stop building the second Beit HaMikdash, and Hashem says, no, you need to keep on building. All political indications to the contrary. And like the second to last line of the parak is, and they listened to God and they did what he said. I'm like, yes! Here is one of Mrs. Herzog's top 5 favorite lines in the entire Tanakh, because it's a happy ending for a change. Very rarely happens, unfortunately. Okay, so we are in, I think it's parak. Here's my next little arrow.
Kaf Gimel.
Kaf Gimel. That's if I have Kaf Hey. Why do I have Kaf Hey? The beginning of Torah. Ve'ela Torah, yeah. So we're in the beginning of Parak Kaf Hey, it's in Chayei Sarah. Okay, Ve'ela Torah. Yitzhak, we talked about how this shows us, the Midrash shows us the dynamic between Yitzhak and Rivka, and how, each one accepts the other's strengths and weaknesses, despite the fact that they are very, very, very opposite. And what I want to focus on now is what happens with these children. Okay, so Rivka gets pregnant. I'm in Pasuk Kaf Bet. Rivka gets pregnant. Vataha Rivka Ishto. She gets pregnant. Vayitrotzu habanim b'kirba. And the boys, or the children, wrestled in her midst. Vatomer, and she said, Im Kain, if so, lama ze anochi. Why am I? Vatelach lidrosh et Hashem, and she went to seek out God. Very, again, we know this story so well. The twins were fighting in the Midrash, and every time she passed a house of Avodah Zarah, Esav would kick, and every time she passed a Mizbeach for Hashem, Yaakov would kick. But clearly what she is sensing is that the physical turmoil of having 2 babies in her insides is more than just normal. This is an abnormal amount of movement, kicking, that there's, something more, and that leads her to say, Im Kain, if so, meaning if there's this much, Lama ze anochi, why am I this? Very weird expression. So Vatomer, what I believe that she's saying is as follows. If it's this, if there is already tension, there's already strife, and I haven't even given birth yet, okay, then Lama ze anochi, why, number one, why did I even get pregnant? Right? We wanted to get pregnant, Yitzhak Davin, Hashem, so why did I get pregnant if already from the get-go there's problems? maybe I wasn't supposed to get pregnant. Maybe that's why I didn't get pregnant. On a simple pshat level, she could say like, oh my gosh, if there's this much problems and I'm just only pregnant, how am I going to give birth? I'm going to die in childbirth, which was also very common, right? That's according to the Midrash. Rachel, when Binyamin was born, Binyamin was a triplet. Like all of, the Midrash, all of the other Shvatim were twins. There was a boy and a girl. Take that however you want. But that what was it that undid Rachel in Binyamin's birth was that there was a triplet. And that she physically couldn't handle. And that's why she died. But, we see that multiples run in these Semitic families. But the other possibility is she's saying, Mama ze anochi, why am I this? Meaning, why am I who I am in the sense that I left my home, I married Yitzhak, I entered into this completely different culture. It's like, so why did I do all of this? What's my purpose? What's my mission? Why did Hashem put me through this? There's a real existential crisis that's going on here, and therefore she goes to seek out God. Right? She recognizes that, again, God is playing in this system. He's a player, he's a partner in this system. So let me go find out what's happening here. As opposed to Hashem coming to her like he did to Abraham, but she takes the initiative. So she goes, and this is what she's told. Vayomer Hashem la, and Hashem spoke to her. So by all indications, she gets nevuah. Shnei goyim bevitnei, there are two nations, there are two in your belly. Ushnei leumim memi'ayach yiparedu, and two. A goy is a culture. A leum is a physical people. Okay, that's the Malbim explains that difference. So there are two cultures in your belly, and two actual physical nations will separate from within you. And the verb liparade in Tanakh means a permanent separation. Okay, like for example, when it talks about the 4 rivers coming out of Gan Eden, it says that they were yipared in Megillat Rut, which is coming up. It says Rak hamavet yafrid beini u'beinech, that only death. That's the only thing, because it's a permanent separation. That's the only thing. And when Abraham kicks Lot out of his house, and he says, hipared na me'alai. This separation has to be permanent. So Hashem is saying there is going to be a permanent, irrevocable separation. Ula'om mil'om yamot, and each peoples will strive with each other, like they're going to make efforts, like chazak ve'ematz. V'rav ya'avod tza'ir, and the greater one, and greater here could either mean greater in numbers, greater in strength, or older, will serve the younger one. Okay, so what we have here is Hashem setting up this eternal destiny, which in itself is like a very weird kind of a concept when we are raised to understand that we have free will. But Hashem is giving Rivka a heads up, and he's saying, look, this is not just about you. This is not just about these 2 boys. This is a paradigm of the future, of what's going to happen. This is kind of a recipe for struggle. I'm not going to necessarily say recipe for trouble, but certainly a recipe for struggle. And okay, so V'yimal yameh haledet, and her days, it was time to give birth. V'hinei tomim bevitna, and behold, there were twins. Okay, but notice there's a kriyu ketiv, the aleph, it's not te'omim, it's tomim, like the word tam or tamim. They were both full, complete, like really each one was their own. They weren't, there's like no connection really. Like maybe they were both in her womb. I mean, clearly they're fraternal twins, not identical twins. They've both kind of been living in there for 9 months, but they're not really twins. Okay? Vayetze harishon admoni, and the first one comes out all red. Kulo ki aderet se'ar. He's like a woolen, a hairy cloak. Okay? Sometimes you see these like really hairy babies. They're just amazing. Vayikru shemo Esav, and she calls him Esav because it basically means he's fully complete, like from the word la'asot. Right? He's done. He's overbaked. Okay? The achar came, Yatsa Achiv, and his brother comes out. Right? So this is the first time Yaakov is referred to as Esav's brother. That's kind of even though they're separate, and they're separate nations, and they're really separate, there's the flip side of it is that they are still bonded as brothers. Vayado ochezet ba'akev Esav, and his hand was holding Esav's heel. Vayikra shmo Yaakov, and his name was Yaakov. So the dynamic that's established in this family, like literally in the womb, but certainly from the moment of get-go, is on the one hand, there's conflict between them. The second hand, they're completely independent. In other words, their selfhood is far more important to them than their siblinghood, which is one of the reasons I think we have this midrash about Leah giving the signs to Rachel, that those were at least trying to correct what happened with Yaakov and Esau. On the other hand, though, even though it says V'rav ya'avod sa'ir, right, the elder or the greater will serve the younger, it seems from the beginning that it's actually the younger, the second one, that's grabbing onto, that is additional, supplemental to the older one. And then again we have the midrash, which I think tells us a lot, again, about how this relationship began, which is that Yaakov was conceived first, and he really should have been the first one to be born, and Esau pushed him out of the way. And, I'm going to quote Menachem Leibtag here, who always says, don't take midrash literally, take midrash seriously. In the sense that the way adults should be learning midrash is different than the way 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds should be learning midrash. And that, yes, these create very powerful, lasting visual images, but the question is what is this midrash trying to teach us? How do you know who was conceived first? But what the midrash is saying is that from the beginning, there is this sense that, there's a conflict about who's entitled to be born first, who's entitled to the blessing, who's entitled to their parents' love. Like there's just and to some degree, Yaakov wants what Esav has, which is his father's love. Esav seems to not care, but in the confrontation, which we'll see in a second, when he comes with he does want what Yaakov has. He wants that soup. So let's go further in the psukim. Another systemic mistake. Parents, cautionary tale, do not show favoritism. You might feel it. My students say, "Oh, do you favor students? Do you like one kid more than the other?" Da, da, da. Like, okay, here's the bottom line. I'm a human being. Are there human beings that you like more than other human beings? Yes. Do you have people that you're really close friends with and people that, just not for me? Yes. Okay, so I'm human too. There are going to be people that I click with better, and that's no different with my own children. That doesn't mean that I love one more than the other, and I darn well better not show it. That's my job as a parent, that's my job as a teacher, is because we see what happens when a child, right? And it's very, very ironic. Vayigadlu hane'arim, and they got larger, they came into themselves. Vayhi Esav ish yodei tzayid, and Esav was a hunter. He ish sadeh, he was a person of the field. V'Yaakov ish tam, and Yaakov is a one that's whole, which would mean that ish tzayid. Remember, in order to be a hunter, you have to be very cunning, right? You have to know how to be quiet. You have to know how to hide. So So Tzayid and Tam are put opposite each other, and Yaakov, as opposed to being Ish Sadeh, is an Ish Yoshev Ohali. So you have this family where the people are very different. Vaye'ehav, there's that verb, Yitzhak et Esav, ki tzayid b'fiv. Which is like so weird. Yitzhak loves Esav because Esav is everything Yitzhak isn't. Right? Yitzhak is this completely pure, almost angelic. I see him as, the physicist in the Advanced Institute at Princeton who really doesn't get why a kid would have learning issues, right? Also happens to be a complete, classic, nerdy scholar, and then his kid is, working like for the NBA. So yeah, he loves this child. He loves this child because the child is everything that he isn't. And this is again, in family systems theory, the child cannot make up for your deficits. You can't, anytime you try to live vicariously through somebody else, it's going to be a problem.
Actually, this also sheds light on the Ishmael issue, because if Yitzhak is the kind of person who is attracted to that Ishmael Esav type, and maybe Sarah picked up on that, and she said, "This is gonna."
Correct.
So you see, but then it comes back
Like
to the
that.
next generation. There's no
Right.
escaping.
There's no escaping, right? And Rivka, and conversely, Rivka, who's coming from Bethuel and coming from Laban, and by all, again, take the midrash. She was 3 years old with whatever grains of salt, or literally, but she grew up in Yitzchak's house, right? But on the other hand, she's the tzaddik ben Rasha, and she loves Yaakov because again, Yaakov is her opposite. But what's interesting is that she's able to separate from Yaakov in the sense that she's not living through Yaakov. It doesn't say that. It tells us why Yaakov loved Esau, but it just says that Rivka loved.
Why Yitzhak?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Why Yitzhak loved Esau, right? Ki tzayid b'fiv, and then it just says v'Rivka ohevet et Yaakov. It just says that she loved Yaakov. Now, again, my guess is it probably was extremely painful for Esau to notice this also. Right? We have to, he's a human being. And in the next scene, which according to the Midrash, the boys were 15 at the time, because according to the Midrash, this was Abraham's funeral, and if you do the math, you figure out that they were 15. So, that's it, right? So now, Vayazed Yaakov Nazid. So, and Yaakov made a soup. It's kind of a weird thing to talk about, right? Yeah. Since when do the men make soup? Since when do the men cook? So Yaakov is clearly a homebody. He's clearly a softer, gentler, you could even say more effeminate type of person. So he has made this soup. Vayavo Esav min hasadeh. Makes sense, right? He's coming from his element. V'hu ayev, and he's tired. Another very weird thing for the Torah to be telling us. Like, why do we need to know that? Vayomer Esav el Yaakov, and Esav says to Yaakov, Hale eteni na, please ladle me, min ha'adom hazeh, ki ayev anochi. Ladle for me, please, some of this redness because I am tired.
Can you print it again?
Okay, so clearly what tired here means is not tired, but it means worn out. I'm worn out. I'm exhausted, whether it's physically or emotionally. Or in terms of my responsibilities. Because what happens next, right? Al kain kara shemo Edom. So, just FYI, he's not called Edom because he was red-haired. he's called Edom because his existence was a physical blood existence. This gives us a little bit more insight into why Rivka was horrified at the thought that this child would carry on the Abraham Yitzhak legacy. It wasn't just because he was a hunter, it wasn't just because he was cunning, but it was because his focus was on the body, was on blood, was on, survival. And there was no spirituality there. It doesn't mean he was a bad person. It's just his values were not Abraham Yitzhak values. Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov says, Michra beyom et bechoratech. Sell me your firstbornness. Right? Tell me your rights as the firstborn. Vayomer Esav, Hinei anochi holech lamut. I'm going to die. Right? I'm about to die. My body, I'm dying here, man. I am dying. Right? That's, the lama zeli bechora. What do I care about the bechora? And this is where Esav goes wrong. Right? He could have said no. Right? What was my kingdom for?
Horse.
Is that what it was? My kingdom for a horse? It's like he's totally in the moment. And Yaakov, being the Yaakov, we think of, here's the irony, right? Esav is called an Ish Tzayid. He's cunning. He's the hunter. But it's Yaakov who outsmarts him. And again, you can see this very negatively, and it comes back to bite him. But on the other hand, you see this idea that as a Ben Abraham, as a Jew, you have to take and Sarah, you have to take the long view in something. What that seems to be important in this system. You can't just be here in the now.
And also, you pointed out there's so many odd details that are being presented here. The Torah really wants a focus on the soup and the exchange and the selling.
Yep.
I mean, big time.
Big time. Okay, Vayomer Esav, Hinei anochi holech lamut, v'lama b'chora, Vayomer Yaakov, Hishav Ali. Swear to me. Okay, this is the one time, this and with Rachel are the one time, like Yaakov says, do it. Vayom, Kayom, swear to me like now. Vayishavelo, and he swore to him. Vayimkor et bechoroto, and he sold him his firstbornness to Yaakov. Okay, Vayakov natan laEsav lechem umezid adashim. Vayochal, vayesht, vayakam, vayelach, vayivez Esav et habechora. Okay, so what happened? Yaakov gave him bread, and he gave him soup, and then what does the Torah do? It gives this. Anytime you have a list of verbs, you know that this is happening very, very fast. Okay? He eats, he drinks, he gets up, he goes, and he completely makes light of this bechorah. Again, it's like, and it's nothing to him. And here we see again this complete clash of values and how it doesn't work. It can't work. You can't have a family system that's going to last when it's one thing to be opposites. The boys start off as opposites. Where they have gotten to by this point is irreconcilable. The differences here in the Weltanschauung is like they're just irreconcilable differences, and obviously this now goes on forever. So we're going to stop here. Lots of food for thought. We'll finish up next week with Yaakov and his wives and his children and more cautionary tales and lots of food for thought going into Shavuot.